Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Why Not Mindset. Conversations is about real, honest, and sometimes raw conversations. We talk about lived experience, second chances, mindset, and what it actually takes to rebuild after adversity when the odds are stacked against you. If you or someone you know has been impacted by incarceration, trauma, addiction, or just life knocking you down, this space is for you. And if you are someone who wants to understand more, support others, and be a part of real change, guess what? You're in the right place. So go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. And with that, we are going to go ahead and jump right into it. I'm very excited about this one. This is amazing. Caroline Georgiou, thank you so much. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun.
I'm just delighted to be here, Rustin. I'm just in such awe of your energy and the work that you're doing. So to be invited into your space is a big deal for me.
Well, thank you. I'm really humbled. I wrote this part down because I really wanted to give you the honor that you deserve. So, Caroline Georgiou, trauma trained counselor with over 25 years of experience, somatic movement therapist, and clinical supervisor specializing in sound led transformation. This is amazing. Nervous system healing and conscious dreaming for well being. Wow. And as of today, you are the pioneer of Innerdance therapy that is in prisons, schools, groups, and organizations. And I'm going to set that down. I wanted to make sure that I got everything right. I didn't leave anything out because this is something that I think just wow. So did I get out? Did I leave anything out? Anything you want to add?
Oh, there's lots of strings to my bow, but yeah, I've been a counsellor for over a quarter of a century now, and I've really used that experience to help me to hold conversations that are real and raw. And it's really stood me in great stead for the work that I'm doing in prisons. And so that's really where my focus and my purpose lies in working sort of behind locked doors and to help people to find freedom internally, regardless of their conditions or their external circumstances.
That's amazing. Before I start asking you about specifics, I would love to uh, hear and let you share about the work that you do in maybe your own words when about the inner dance. If someone hears inner dance or sound led therapy for the first time, what do you hope they understand about it? What do you hope they take away from sound led therapy, inner dance?
Sure. So we all understand that music and noise have an impact upon us, and that we listen to particular songs to uplift us, to motivate us, to get us to train harder in the gym. When we need to cry, there's always a song that can move us. And scientists are able to measure that it changes our biochemistry, right? So we produce more testosterone, for example, if we're listening to a particular type of music in the gym, and that helps us to train faster and harder. And we also know, and you spoke about this when we had a conversation earlier on today, about the noises that are in our environment have a direct and immediate impact upon our well-being. So if we want peace and quiet, we tend to go somewhere that is away from big crowds. You know, I live by a river, so I hear water all the time, and that helps to calm me down. But in a prison, there's a particular 24 hours a day, 7 days a week soundscape that's in the background that we can't turn off, and it's the clanking of keys, and it's the continuous murmuration of voices. It's sounds and noises that we can't control. Anyway, in the work of Innerdance, what we've done is we've realized that by arranging music in a certain order, we can evoke a certain pattern in our brain waves. So when we go to sleep and we dream, our brains produce certain brainwave patterns. And by listening to music in a certain order, we can change the brainwave patterns to look and to do the same rhythm as when we're dreaming. And through that, people can have a dream when they're awake. So you lie down, eyes closed, you don't have to do a thing. We play either live music or music that's been put together beforehand, and people go on an inner journey. So the dance is actually entirely internal. It might be through sensation, emotion, memory. It might be the sense of energy beginning to move through the body. And people have an inner journey, and they might discover something about themselves, or they might transform something traumatic that's been held in the body. And that's really the work of inner dance. It's working with something that's non-invasive, like music and noise, as a tool and a mechanism for internal freedom.
That's incredible. That's incredible. You, excuse me, you mentioned the music, and what struck me about the power that a song, that the music has. I can relate that back to, I could be driving with my wife or driving somewhere, and a song can come on. It might be an old song, but it takes you to where, when you first heard that, where were you at when you heard that? And we did have little radios in prison with headphones. Excuse me again. And today I could listen to a song could come on the radio, and it might be a song that is well known by everyone else and well loved, but it's not too well loved by me, even though it's a good song because I heard it in prison.
Yes.
There might be a song that I hear that's a wonderful song. I don't want to take any credit away from it, but that might be led back to my past. Now, it doesn't mean I changed the station. It just takes you back. It just takes you. It puts you in that zone, if you will, of where you were when you heard it.
Absolutely.
And there's also a couple songs that just might not mean anything to anyone else, but maybe a dancing song, but might bring a little tears to my eyes because it reminds me of when I first met my wife and when we went out dancing. And it was like a club song. To everyone else, it might not mean anything, but to me, it can just bring me to a stop, a standstill, and I just want to reflect. And I've listened to a song, and then just right when the first two beats come out, I look at my wife and just tell her how much I love her because it reminds me back.
Yes, it really takes you into your heart.
Yeah. So when you talk about the music, it really does have so much power. Sound does. That's why I know this is going to be a great conversation. Just that sound. You've been working in trauma, sound, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what somatic healing means. But you've been doing this for decades. Was there a moment or experience where this path became clear to you? What started all this, where you knew this was the work you were meant to do?
Well, I've had several moments like that in my life. I knew from a very young age that I just wanted to help people to be free to be themselves. And I remember the very first counselling book I ever read. I was 17. Actually, a tutor on my degree course. I never thought I was intelligent enough to go to college or university, and someone sort of really believed in me and then nudged me, and I got in. And a tutor, I don't know, they saw something in me too. And she encouraged me to read a particular book. And I don't know, the words just touched something deep inside of me. And for the first time, I felt a sense of resonance and belonging. And I knew, wow, this is my path, this is my purpose. It's like, it's speaking directly to my soul. So I really want to honor those key people in my life that have seen something in me that even I couldn't see in myself. Because those moments, those people stay with you forever, right? And so I pursued counselling with dedication for decades, just developing more and more experience and skill along the way. And I became extremely interested in working with trauma. And I had an understanding through all of those really powerful conversations along the way that we can't think our way out of trauma. You know, that it's not a cognitive process of reclamation. It has to involve all of us, right? Our whole body. And I became really interested in research that was coming out. And I realised that I was holding on to a lot of unprocessed trauma in my own body. So I did a master's degree in somatic movement. And what that really means is it's like I went back to nursery or kindergarten and I was taught what freedom really means. And it means being able to play, being able to move your body in ways that the body wants to move. It's being able to tune into the sensations, the intuition, all of the processes and systems that are happening all the time under the skin, usually under our levels of awareness. And when I began to move, particularly with my eyes closed, a lot of visions and images would come to me, and I realized, start to wake up my dreaming again. And I went to a session. A friend said, come with me to this session. It's called Innerdance. And I'm like, yes, anything to do with movement and dance, I'm there. You know, this is what I'm learning. This is how I'm discovering my freedom and who I really am. But it wasn't that at all. We had to lie down on a mat with our eyes closed, and this really weird music started to play. It was loud, it was uncomfortable. And so I was like tracking, you know, got my heart's beating really fast. I feel scared one minute, I feel joy the next. I feel stuff's happening that I just can't make sense of. And this voice inside of me said, you need to stand up now. And I ignored it. And it said it again, you need to stand up, Caroline. So, right, okay. So I stood up, still with my eyes closed. And just as I stood up, as clear as you are to me now, Rustin, I had a vision of a goddess. It was pure energy, purple energy that was moving and levitating. And it just looked like a divine feminine. And she was beckoning to me. And as I looked at her, I understood that I was being initiated into something deeply spiritual. My life was never going to be the same again. And I now had to dedicate my life to this work. And that's what I've been doing. So I did as much training as I possibly could with the original teacher, whose name is Pi, and started offering it in the local community. I was invited to work in some schools with children who have additional educational needs, who have trauma. And then one day, a local prison asked me to come and have a session with some of the guys who are part of the recovery hub process. And that's where my bridge into working behind bars began. So saying yes to every opportunity, every door that was opening, I went along, met the most incredible and generous men I've ever met, who looked at me with compassion, and it was like they could see me clearly. It reminded me of that one teacher in primary school, or that friend of my friend's mum that made me apply for university, or that tutor that believed in me. They had the same light in their eyes, and I really felt seen, and I felt a sense of freedom in those sessions. And what I discovered about the people that I was working with was how empathic and highly sensitive they are, but wired towards survival. You know, these are guys that, who were born able to have really wild, lucid dreams, that could sense energy, that were psychic, that know things, that are highly intuitive, but because a lot of the trauma and chaos in their lives, they had to use that information to survive. So they learned how to hide, or they learned how to fight. They learned how to, just get by rather than thriving. And here they are, they're in prison. and they're using those exact same skills that I'm using, but they're using them again just to get through their day in prison without getting into a fight, without getting reprimanded or excluded. And I'm offering them a way to reclaim those innate gifts and skills for freedom, for positivity, to remember who they were born to be. Because I don't believe anyone was born to be a prisoner. But for those who end up in prison, it's because they have to transcend that. And I know that that's not going to be available to everybody, but there's something about the work that we're doing together that enables that, even if it's just for an hour a week. So back to the people that I'm working with, these people that are so sensing and sensitive, they have the most lucid dreams in these experiences when I press play and I facilitate them. And with some people I offer therapeutic touch or energy work, or I work with live instruments. They go on the most incredible voyages in their mind. And I know because their brainwaves they're having a dream experience, but they're fully awake at the same time. And they're going into the future, or they're going to ancient Egypt, or they're revisiting their the crime that led them to the time that they've spent in prison. And they're discovering something entirely unique about themselves from inside. And it's changing how they feel about life. They're able to sleep. Some of the guys are saying sleeping for the first time in a whole night in years, if not in their whole life. Some guys are saying this is interrupting my addiction patterns, like I don't have the urge to use anymore, or when I have used, it doesn't have the same effect. You know, people are feeling more compassionate, or they're wanting to spread the word so that as many people in prison can have this experience, because they know that there's something really powerful about the process. So, and that's kind of like what I've been dedicating my life to. And yeah, that's my purpose now.
That's incredible. That it takes that little part takes me back to where you told me just a few minutes ago that it all started when someone believed in you.
Yes.
Like a mentor. Someone believed in you and said, you know, I see something. And look, because of that one person that reached out and said, I believe this is for you. I believe, come check this out. The multiple people you're speaking of that said, hey, come check this event out. Just look at what it led to. And I try to relate that back to mentorship and guidance, and someone who's been there, someone who's lived it and said, I see this in you. I see purpose in you. That's
Yes.
amazing. That's amazing. I want to talk. I want to get into a little bit specific about prisons, because that's a space that matters to me. What you mentioned someone talked to you about prison, but you're going into prisons, and you're going into some prisons in the U.S., right? Some high security. If I'm correct, I heard, or I might have read that you've even went into San Quentin.
No, not San Quentin, sadly. There had been a hope to do some of the I suppose, more notorious prisons, but when I was in America last year, the some of the prisons went into lockdown because of what was happening on the streets, because of the ICE sweeps, particularly in California. But I've facilitated Innerdance at Calipatria State Prison, at Los Angeles County Jail with General Population and High Mental Health Observation Unit, been to Ironwood State Prison, and also facilitated at our Oregon State Penitentiary.
Oregon has some pretty high security prisons. How were you received in the beginning, the middle, the end? Well, I think what I'm trying to get at is can we talk about some of the outcomes and how this is all led, and what has been some outcomes? Do we have any type of statistics of like lowering of violence or lower? You mentioned addiction, but overall, has there been like an overall lower rate of trauma and violence?
So currently there hasn't been any sort of long-term study because this is a very new practice, particularly in the prison system, and it would require a certain, ethics and certain approvals to go ahead before I was able to do a long-term study. But I was able to gather some informal feedback, some feedback forms from the men and women who had participated in the sessions, so that we got an immediate sense of how they were feeling after the sessions. And I was through this, I was volunteering with an organisation who also provides sort of a letter writing service, and so we did receive some letters afterwards where some of the participants wanted to say thank you and share what had happened in the following weeks or months since the session, how it wasn't just like an event, it was something that had shifted and had changed their outlook, that it had changed something inside of them, and they now felt a clearer sense of purpose, that something about their identity had changed and they were no longer that number. They were remembering what freedom is, and that they wanted to make significant changes in their life, even if they were never going to be released. If they've got one of those sentences that's till eternity, that true power comes from being a positive influence, and that they can have a positive impact with their friends and family who call them on the phone, and they can, if their kid's having a hard day at school, they can use the skills that they're learning or the insights to help their child through a difficult time, or they can be a peer mentor for someone who they share a cell with, or they're on the same block. It's been incredible. So I would love to do like an official study. That would be amazing. So if anyone's listening that would like to help me do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyone listening, let's reach out to Caroline Georgiou. Yeah,
Georgiou. Yeah.
You and I have just touched base a little bit and shared had a conversation, shared the idea of maybe doing in the future, seeing if there's any way we could combine the Innerdance with some motivational speaking.
Definitely.
I think
I owe you a soundscape. I've promised Rustin a few months ago, but it's just been very busy. I do owe you a soundscape. But there's something very powerful. I mean, your message is so powerful, right? Your frequency, it resonates with people all around the world. You really are a guiding light. And imagine if we take that energy of yours, that frequency in your voice and your message, and we combine it with not music that you hear on the radio, but music that's been arranged to stimulate the dreaming. Right? So when we dream, we are consolidating memories. So the things that have happened in our day that we need to integrate. So we're learning through dreaming. We're dreaming bigger. We are integrating trauma. Our biggest dreams, our nightmares are the most important ones we have. So we're stimulating the dream response in people who stopped dreaming a long time ago. And you're combining it with your message. That's powerful. That goes right into the subconscious. It bypasses all of the false layers of identity and illusion that people have, and it just touches people in the heart. It speaks to a deeper wisdom. And so change happens from a very deep cellular level. Radio Rustin, that's what we could call it.
Yeah, I think back and try to see how this would have affected me, because I was in federal in prison, and I try to think back how this could have impacted me. But at the same time, I can't help but think of some others that I was surrounded with in prison. Particularly, I think of a person, I won't say their name, but I think of a person who, when I went in, I met him. He was, I believe, around 70 years old, and he had already done about 30 years of his life sentence. And he went in, when he first went in, he told his family, "I'm never getting out, so forget me. forget who I am. Please don't write me. If you come to me, I will not accept your letters. I will not accept your visits. I love you. He told me the story that he just told his family, his grandchildren, that stop corresponding, just forget me, and I love you. And I wonder, and this was 30 years later, and he wasn't bitter, but he was lonely. He was very lonely, and he was just so isolated. And it didn't break him, but at the same time, maybe it did, and maybe I wonder what kind of impact your Innerdance could have had with him.
Who knows? Maybe I could share a story. There was one guy that came to a session, super cynical, like the guy, obviously, like he's popular and maybe not someone who would normally attend that kind of thing, and thought he'd give it a go, but didn't think anything would happen for him. And he lay down and he closed his eyes, and he said that his dead brother came to speak to him, because he'd taken his brother had died very young. He'd taken custody of his nephews and nieces, and his brother had pointed to his feet and said, "You're on the wrong path. You are a father, and that is your purpose." And he said that his body filled up with light, and everything became clear, that he had to change his ways. And after the session, then he generously shared that with everybody. That's part of the medicine, is in that community time when we share what happened. And he was just blown away. He couldn't believe that in 1 hour everything had changed for him, and he knew he had to make changes and choices that would align him with being the father that he was tasked with being, and he had to honor his brother. And I guess I'm bringing this particular story in just to meet this gentleman who made that sacrifice, that there was something about him not worth loving. And,
yeah.
I wonder, there's something about the power of this energy, of this music, that helps us to reconnect with the past, the present, and the future. Maybe a bit like your why not mindset. And enables us to understand that we really are, at our essence, love. And, and that we all deserve it.
And we need it.
We learn to receive it. Of course, we need it. Absolutely.
We're not supposed to go through this life without love.
No.
My opinion, we're not supposed to go through this life without giving love. We're not supposed to go through this life being isolated. Some people say, I like to be alone. Sometimes it's hard for me to buy that. We are meant to be together as a collective, as a whole. We have so much fun when we gather. Sometimes I gather with my friends at a cigar lounge. Some people go and gather at a restaurant. But when you're together, when you're sitting at a table, when you're breaking bread with your fellow comrades or family, that's where you feel like you belong. We're supposed to love, and we're supposed to receive love. And everybody deserves that. Everyone deserves it and needs it. That's right. That's incredible. From your perspective, what do the prison system, the systems in general, what do you think they often misunderstand about the trauma, healing, rehabilitation, and how do you feel your work could help bridge that gap?
Well, I guess in my limited experience is that the system itself is traumatized. And so the healing really needs to take place on so many levels, but the change can be initiated by the people who spend most of their time in the system, right?
Mm.
The prisoners themselves can initiate great change, and it's grassroots. And if enough people start to resonate, to lift the frequency of a prison to one of well-being, of hope, of expecting transformation rather than being the exception to the rule, then systems begin to change subtly at first. But like when I walk into a prison, I'm like, wow, it's time oriented, so it's super dense, it's a heavy energy, there's unprocessed trauma that goes back, like I'm working in prisons that are like hundreds of years old, so it holds a lot of stories of pain, unresolved pain, right? Those stories continue long after people have died or have been released. And that's what we co-regulate to. We co-regulate to the strongest frequency in a room. So you and I, our heartbeats are starting to beat as one because we're now in the same field. And
Absolutely.
if one of us was really anxious or nervous, that stronger heartbeat, one of us would start to feel nervous as well, right? So
even across the waters, even across the waters.
There's no,
I feel your excitement.
Sense of distance. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you feel it already. So you go into a prison, and the dominant feel of the place is heaviness and pain and anger and anguish and torment and trauma. And so that's the frequency with which you regulate to, because that becomes the feel of the community. But what if we were to do more work like this? What if more people like you, Rustin, if you brought Why Not Mindset into prison spaces and you inspire people, when people light up on the inside because of something they hear, or they have an experience with sound that bypasses words and stories and takes them to the root of who they really are, then the frequency changes. I'm seeing firsthand that men who have maybe committed really awful acts of violence are feeling their heart at a frequency of one of well-being and love. And what if we were able to support that in more and more and more people? Then the feel of a prison, the sound of a prison would change. And then perhaps there might be less recidivism because people are learning how to stay at a frequency where there's choice and agency and hope and dreams and purpose. And that's not trauma and despair and anguish and rage. Yeah? They're able to transform and use that as fuel to bring them up into a place of well-being. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do. And I suppose for me, coming from more of that somatic, the intelligence of the body, and more of a spiritual perspective, that's what I see happening. That's what I see can happen.
And the work you're doing inside prisons, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with the prison aspect. I want to get into the universities and stuff and other things. But when you're saying how you can change their frequencies, and I'm trying to take it all in, because some of the trauma, some of the hate, some of the discontent, not only, it doesn't just start in prison. It could have started as a bad childhood. It could have started as a young adult. But of course, being inside prison, that's where it all thrives. Is the hate, is the discontent, the anger. And it would be, I think, just so impactful that even as they got that while they were young, when they're in prison, being able to change the game, if you will, by, while you're in prison, be able to release that, because that's just about unheard of, is while you're in prison to release trauma, to release anything while you're in prison. While you're in prison, usually it does nothing but isolate you, or just expand that emotion. If you're coming in full of hate, then all that's going to do is amplify. If you're coming in scared, it's going to amplify. You're coming in as silent. If you're coming in hurt, prison is just a place that's going to, I've said this before. When you go into prison, it's kind of like a pickle jar. It just pickles you, and it just preserves you the way you are, or it can make it even stronger. Now, doing this in prison and making an impact in prison and changing, wow, what a mindset that could be, to say, I went into prison, I experienced the Innerdance. I experienced the lift of trauma, the lift of hate, the lift, like you said, people were able to dream again. For me, dreaming wasn't really, it didn't really happen. Prison is a place where you need to stay on your toes, if you will. Well, I was in two separate prisons. The first prison I was in had prison cells, and because it was a higher security, and the only time you had relief, a little bit of relief, was when they locked you down for the night, because that's when the only person you have to rely on is your bunkmate. They lock you down, and now you're somewhat safe for the next 8 hours. And then they open the door and you come out, and then it's just look over your shoulder, be on your toes, see everything, but yet you don't see everything. But then I got transferred after I lived that life of the only time I feel secure is when I'm inside my cell locked down for the night. Then I shifted to a lower security prison where there's no cells. It's just an open dorm.
Like a module. Yeah.
It's just open. And then you get transferred with that mindset of a higher security, of the rigid controlled environment. Then you're going into a lower security, and it's just open. It's just an open bay, an open room, a bunker, if you will, open bay. And there's 600 people. The loud roar 24 hours a day, that loud roar, and you get no peace of mind, and you think you're going to a lower security, but in your mind, it's just such a mind shift. It's such a mindset that you have to adjust to, that first you have to adjust yourself to that medium. Now you have to adjust yourself to the low, and it's just so many different mindsets. Again, back with the music, back with sounds of healing and trauma, what that could do to relieve some of that pressure and let you focus on love, let you focus on healing, let you focus on what you're going to do next, let you reach out to your family and say, I love you.
Absolutely. I'm really struck by, even though you're describing moving from maximum to minimum security, it sounds like in some ways it might have felt less safe.
Yes.
It just requires a different kind of survivalism. But,
yeah.
So the maximum security prison that I facilitate at in Scotland, I co-host a radio show, and they also play some of my soundscapes. So they're an hour long on the radio at night time. So up to 500 guys, potentially could be journeying at the same time. You imagine if 500 men at the same time are going through this, what you could call a sound meditation, but going through a journey, like a hero's journey inside. Their eyes are closed, and they have no sense of time. The prison sounds disappear. Nobody ever hears what's going on. It really becomes like you're cocooned in this journey. So the potential for this is incredible. It changes the frequency through that. For me, like a lifeline in prison is the prison radio system, and the music that you play on a radio can lift the spirits of people, or it can get them angry, or it can get them sad. But to bring a sound meditation onto the radio, for everyone who chooses to journey, they have access to that resource. That's my dream, that at any time, for whichever country or prison you are in, that you can access those sounds and you can meditate with yourself.
It sounds to me like the Innerdance should not have any borders. It sounds like it.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because even in the most confined of spaces, people are feeling freedom. Like they feel they're flying through the air, they're being visited by a dead relative. One guy felt he was at his sister's grave and he was able to have a conversation with her that he
No
couldn't have because he
way.
missed her funeral. One guy who'd missed the birth of his first son he felt like he was there and he witnessed his wife give birth and he held his baby in this dream and he felt that his whole sense of who he was as a father had changed because now it, the assumptions and the guilt and the shame that he had about not being there just disappeared, and now he knew that he could freely be with his son, even on the phone, just that he could show up in a different way. So yeah, so there's freedom. It's more than a release date. I'm not even sure that that is freedom for many people. For me, it's a dimension, and it's one that we can cultivate inside of ourselves. And I know that through conversations that we've had previously, Rustin, I guess that's my interpretation of what you've described, that through your why not mindset, you crafted and cultivated an inner freedom because there was a lot of obstacles in your life around you. There were, you were in a federal prison, you didn't have the freedom that many of us assume it to be. And yet on the inside, that's what you were discovering, that nobody could take that away from you. And you weren't going to let this break you. You were going to let it be the making of you, right?
I say that never let your past refine you. Never let your past define you. Let it define you. Let it refine you. Yeah, let it refine.
It's such a beautiful and powerful statement. Our biography is not our path, is not who we are, but our dreams are. And if we can dream again, like you say, people in prison, they sleep with one eye open, or they've maybe never slept a proper deep rest in their life. I've worked with guys who've suffered such unimaginable trauma as children. They couldn't ever go into a deep sleep where they're able to dream because bad things happen at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then for 1 hour a week, they feel like they've had 8 hours sleep. Because that's what can happen when we go into this particular brain state. We don't feel like it's an hour, it feels like 5 minutes, but at the same time you feel like you've had the best night's sleep of your life. And you were also journeying around the world or the deep space, or it's wild and the most safe experience to have.
And also, you talking about speaking about dreaming, I'll move a little bit out of prison. When I was released, my wife talks about this often, that I would often afterwards have dreams at least once or twice a week, bad dreams, excuse me, of my past catching up with me. Just for instance, one of the most recurring dreams that I believe the last one was just a few months ago, is where I'm in a dream and I'll wake up. I mean, not wake up, but I'll be in a dream, and for some reason, I have a duffel bag full of drugs, and I am scared. I just know that the federal government's after me. In this dream, I have a duffel bag full of drugs. There's way too much to get rid of. I'm somewhere that I don't know, but I know the federal government's coming to get me. I have all these drugs. What am I supposed to do with them? And all I'm doing in my dream is screaming and fighting and trying to figure out how can I get rid of all these drugs? How can I do this? And that is like the gist of so many nightmares. And I've woken up just sat straight up in bed before, and my wife is like, another one of your dreams. And it's just a traumatic dream of just not wanting to go back to prison. And those dreams, they are recurring, where it's just different scenarios, but it all involves a large sum of something that I'm not supposed to have. I don't know why I have it. I don't want it. And now I'm just trying to get rid of it before the police come or the federal government come. And it's just so traumatic. And I wonder if the Innerdance could do something for that.
Best that maybe in the dream you could do something a little bit differently, or even if you were to remember the dream when you're awake and just to invite you to do something a little bit differently. Maybe it's to put the rucksack down. Maybe it's to find a park bench. Maybe it's to get that bike or that first car that you bought. Maybe it's to drive off into the sunset, leaving that behind you. I don't know, but what I do know is that, the work of Innerdance is it enables us to feel our fears without getting scared. So we come face to face with those sensations, the memories, the stuff that we don't want to feel and we don't want to look at. But our nervous system feels super relaxed at the same time. And a lot of the people that do it say, I couldn't even move. I couldn't move a muscle. And all of a sudden I'm having this thing that I don't want to look at, and it comes up in my mind, or I see it happening. And I just have to go with it. I just have to trust that I can look at this. And by accepting the nightmare, it changes. And most of us, we wake ourselves up from the bad dream, we wake ourselves up from the nightmare, or we have that glass of wine, or we take that drug, or we gamble again. We do that thing to avoid the discomfort that we have in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But if we learn how to turn towards it, heart facing towards that which scares us, then we can transform it. And that's really what you're doing with your why not mindset. Mm-hmm. When you've got your mentees coming to speak to you, or people reaching out to you, you're not saying to them, let's not talk about this, let's not look at this. You're holding that clear space, that unconditional space where you have no judgment. But what you do see is who they really are, and you help them to see that inside of themselves. And that, as you say, it takes accountability. It takes being able to be honest with ourselves for us to take responsibility and take the next step towards reclaiming freedom in our world, in our lives. And it gets a bit like that in the dream world. We have to face that which we're scared of to move past it and to turn that lead into gold.
Amazing.
So yes, I do believe, I do wholeheartedly trust the power of Innerdance, and I know because it's transformed my life. It's unrecognisable, and I see the impact it's having on people who haven't dreamed in years because they can't afford to fall asleep, who don't believe that there's anything worth getting out for, or believe that they're just going to end back up in prison again. And now they're like, is this available in the community? Can my family do sessions? They want this to be available, widespread, in the community that's outside of prison, and in the community that's inside of prison.
Yeah. You go into universities and colleges and the public sector and share their Innerdance, correct?
Yeah, so have I done universities? I've done high schools and primary schools and community centres. Yeah. So
how is that?
Children.
How has that gone on?
Well, it's incredible. Children are dreamers anyway.
Yes, they are.
Children who are told that, who are diagnosed with ADHD or autism, they're in the dream state, right? We're just daydreamers. And so they find it very easy. You don't have to explain to them that they're magic. They're like, yes, I am magic.
Yes,
So I go in and, they can lie down if they want, or they can play or draw, and they just let the music be around them. And some of them are so exhausted because they're on their screen so much they don't get enough sleep, so they're able to rest. But what I did discover, there was this little, you might like this story, there was a little boy who was, I guess maybe had a label as being a difficult boy. And I think a lot of the teachers really struggled with him. And he had a lot of trauma. And I just thought he was pure gold. He was magic. And he never wanted to participate. He always had to do his own thing, and that was fine. And then one day...
Sounds like my grandson.
He's a wild spirit, right? But completely misunderstood. So I'm working away, and all of a sudden I hear a drum playing, and I look up. And there he is. He's decided that he is also going to facilitate the session. He's like 6 years old. And he takes my drum and he goes around all the children, gently plays the drum at their head, a drum beat per child. And then he starts going around and he places his hands on their shoulders. Is this okay? And he starts healing them. He starts offering them some kindness. And I was like, oh my goodness, he was born to do this. And through that, he inspired me that actually it's not only that they receive this, they need to learn how to do it for each other. So the sessions transformed into they began to hold space for their teachers. So their teachers would sit or lie down, and the children would be the facilitators. They would take charge of the space, and they would touch the head or the heart, or they would play an instrument and help me to hold space. And it was one of the best experiences of my life.
That sounds incredible. That's I think of my little grandson. He's when we're children, we have such imagination. I mean, you can be 5 or 6 years old, and you can go pick up a stick, and that stick can be anything that stick can be a magic wand. It can be a weapon for Star Wars, and you can shoot lasers, or it can cast spells. The imagination of a child is the innocence, the just a pure
Freedom.
yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes I wish I wish other people we could have that imagination, but that the imagination. My grandson, he can just pick up a rock, and it can be an adventure. Just with the just
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
and something like that can just be so amazing. It really can. As you're continuing to expand this work, we're wanting to do this globally and into prisons, sound-based programs. What is the bigger vision you're working towards overall?
Well, I'd like to set up as a charity. I mean, I'd really like this to be in every single space, not only prisons, but I think prisoners are incredible teachers, and that through the prison work, this might then go into more schools and hospitals and other spaces where people need that really active community. And yeah, I'd like to roll this out. I'd like to train people to be able to hold space in this way, because a prison environment is particular, and not everybody wants to go into those spaces. Our nervous system can activate, rightly so. But some people are really drawn to this work, and they've got the right kind of energy to go into those really highly traumatized spaces and hold deep work. So I'd like to train people to be able to do that. I have a dream of, so at the end of each session, I always place flashcards out for the guys, and they look at them and read them, and something in the card might resonate for them and their personal story, and they'll talk about it with each other, and they're amazed at how accurate these cards are. So I have a dream of having conversations with some of the guys that I work with and creating a set of flashcards that are basically by them for them, so that we can create in-cell resources. And so I'm kind of in the process of getting those permissions to do that. And I'd like to help prison radio in Scotland to become national. Every prison has its own radio station, but at the moment they're not linked up. And I would really like to be a part of creating that network that's open. And I suppose using my voice and the sound that I create to help bring about co-regulation and well-being into the wider prison system and beyond. The power of our voice, of our stories, it can ripple out around the world. And if we intentionally use our voice, and even the sound and tone that we use can change how someone feels. If we're able to do that with purpose, then we can really transform, again, the frequencies and the sounds inside the most confined spaces. So I guess those are some of my dreams that are bubbling away under the surface, that I'm open to help, suggestions and offers for anyone that can see that happening as well, or that's even interested in having me come along just to hold space for a group. It's my greatest passion, and the more people who can experience it, the better.
That sounds like an amazing journey to look that I would love to be able to excel that. I have I have just recently been accepted into a correctional facility that is about 30 miles away from where I live. I just got the final email that said you're now accepted. I I would like to go in there. It's going to take a few visits, but I would like to go in there and maybe open the door for something like this and see if we can do something like that. And as well, in April, I have been invited to a reentry conference, and this reentry conference is um, they focus on, they call it a holistic approach to reentry. And I'm really interested in that. So the director has reached out to me because they know that I've been invited to go. So they reached out to me, and we're talking about speaking events, talking about what if I can be a keynote speaker for 2026 at the end. But I would like to introduce your work and let them maybe reach out to you through, because I was interested in why they call it the holistic approach to reentry. And I think that fits just like a puzzle piece with what you're doing.
Exactly.
I
So
I think there's definitely two separate aspects that I think I definitely need to mention you in both these aspects. And
Rustin, you're just an incredible bridge. You really do help people come together,
and that's what it's all about.
Just your vision. Your vision is amazing. Like, you can see things happening, and you inspire people. You know, I feel inspired by you seeing me clearly and seeing, even if you might not fully, because most people don't understand Innerdance until they experience it for themselves. It's one of those, it has to be experienced, right, to believe it. Mm-hmm. And yet you still understand that there's a power here and that it could really help a lot of people. And then I'm like, you know, what if every prison in the world could listen to some of these soundscapes, so that whenever you're having a bad day or a good day in prison, you can just play it, put your headphones on and go on a journey that changes something for you. So I would be very grateful to you mentioning this work to people that might be interested and open to it. And super grateful for that.
Yeah, that's it. It's amazing. Just a little bit ago, when you talked about having the energy, that you could feel my energy and I could feel your energy and excitement. We've been excited for like a few days about what's going on. And just when you said that you could feel my excitement, I was feeling the excitement. So, I mean, that's what it was like. I was excited about this, and you said that you could feel my excitement. I was like, in my mind, I was like, no way she's not feeling my, I just excited. We are getting a little bit closer to the end. For what I would like to ask is, for someone listening who feels disconnected from themselves or trapped by circumstances, what would you want them to know about their capacity to heal, reconnect? What's something you would like for them to know?
Okay. Well, whether you believe it or not, or whether you know it or not, you're incredible. And everything you need, you were actually born with. And it might be that you've forgotten, or maybe somebody didn't teach you or show you how incredible you are. But you are not alone, even in the loneliest of times and spaces. And there are people out there who really genuinely care. People like Rustin. People like me. So don't suffer in silence. Reach out, even if that's the most painful experience in the world, to reach out and not really know or trust that somebody else is going to be at the receiving end of you. But take the risk. Prove yourself wrong, and your stories about your past and who you are wrong, because you're just so much more than you ever thought you were. And I don't know, something about dreaming. Just, you're not a mistake. You're here for a reason, and maybe you've just not found it yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I think it was Tony Robbins, I went to see him in September, and he said that, you know, God's delay is not God's denial. And whether you are religious or not, there's something about a greater intelligence than our own, and we know that because the stars don't fall out of the sky, that there's an order that takes place that doesn't require us, our hearts beat without us having to think about it. So there's an intelligence there.
Love proves it. Love proves exactly what you're saying. If this was just accidental DNA and chemicals being brought together, where's the love come from? Where's the spirituality come from? Where does the sadness, where does it all come from if there's not something above us creating something?
Yes.
Where's it coming from? Caroline, if people are wanting to get a hold of you, if people are wanting to reach out and know more about this Innerdance, how can they find you? How can they reach out to you? And I'll make sure these are all in the description.
Please.
How can someone find Caroline Georgiou?
So you could go onto my website, which is thesoundofdreams.com, and you can even download a free soundscape. It's quite a gentle one, so you can have your own experience wherever you are of some of my work. But yeah, feel free to email me. I've got Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So those are the spaces that I'm less comfortable in, those social media spaces where I'm learning how to go beyond my comfort zone into my courage zone, right? And and trust that when I reach out, people are going to be there. Because, I've got my own stories about connection and not belonging and things like that. But yeah, please don't hesitate. I'd be delighted to hear from you. And yeah. Well, Rustin, what a delightful time to spend.
Yes.
As you can tell, I could talk about my work till the cows come home, and yes. I don't get to talk about it very often. So this has been an absolute delight.
Well, I think maybe we should, in the future, try to align our schedules and maybe have a part 2 and see how all this is working. I'm open to having live streams because I have this platform. I'm open to having live streams. I'm open to having part 2, a part 3, and just see how this is going. Maybe even in the future, we're going to combine, and we're going to the Innerdance motivational, the Caroline Rustin, whatever. We can figure that out later. We can figure out the name of it later. Yeah. It'll come to us.
I do believe that, and I do believe that we're dreaming together, and that we're going to make our dreams come true. But yeah, let's definitely have a part 2. I'm back in prison on Thursday. I'll be on the radio as well, and I'm back in again to help out with there's events around violence and football. So I've been invited to go in with a new group of guys, and it's also linking to domestic abuse. I'll be doing some work with new groups of men, so it'll be really interesting to see how that work is received and what comes up for them. So there's always a conversation to be had, for sure.
Well, Caroline, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for being a change maker, for believing in purpose and action, believing in healing, believing in love, believing in sharing with the world the truth that it's all possible. I really appreciate you coming on, and I will make sure everyone has a link to know how to find you. And thank you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rustin. So much love to you.
Thank you. Thank you.